Pat,
Hey Marty.
how's it going?
Oh, good, good. How are you?
Oh, very well, thanks. All right, let's get back into it. So we're now into the introduction of the book, and we're going to be covering the section, The Weird Idea today. I'll start off with his um, translation of a poem called Snowflakes from, uh, well, Yu Zong Wen, but I was just looking at the dates here. I guess that these must be Yu Zong Wen's dates, which are 1069 to 1123. Um, Anyways, here's the poem. Uh, with petals like onyx, the pistils like jade, they alight one by one on the pond here below. I ask where they come from, how flowers are made. The god of the springtime himself doesn't know. So both of us have strong interests and have been, uh, you know, for a long time into mystical thought, just not Eastern mystical thought, mostly the Western mystics. And the idea of unknowing is a big part of the mystical tradition. One of the more famous uh, pieces of writing by an anonymous monk from the 13th century is called The Cloud of Unknowing. And it's about kind of giving up knowledge. And for our purposes here, it's about giving up purpose, about giving up um, intention. We'll be getting into that today. And I think the quote you had is directly related to that. So,
Yeah, I think this is a great summary kind of the whole book, but certainly, just gives I mean, not that you could summarize a book in like a paragraph, but let me try. He says, "My main purpose here is not to offer the usual arguments against belief in the existence of God. I will be trying to demonstrate neither that the idea of God is objectively false, nor that it is objectively bad. I'm not trying to show either its factual falsity or its historical destructiveness. Rather, my intent is to show the ways in which atheism as such, precisely the rejection of this concept of a single sovereign creator God, has served as a linchpin for doctrines and experience of something we might call, following Nietzsche, redemptive, or more broadly mystical in the works and presumably in the experience of several individuals throughout history." And so what he's saying here is that this idea of the sovereign creator God has really got in the way of a mystical experience and understanding of the world that this mystical atheist tradition, I mean, not so much a tradition, but the thinkers that he's going to be talking about in this book, like Nietzsche, are like they uncover through a kind of deep atheism, not like the classical atheism, which we'll get into later, of like, this humanistic, like, oh, the idea of God is like bad, destructive, like empirically not verifiable, all these different arguments for and against God. It's like not that at all. It's about
yeah.
it's about like going deeper, seeing atheism as a way to open up a deeper like experience of the world. Um,
Yeah, in its because when you're ground, there's a sort of asymmetry between purpose and purposelessness. So that, purpose is exclusive, whereas there's nothing about purposelessness that can stop purpose, but and it doesn't. Like there are, a lot of purposes that come out of the purposeless ground or whatever. And for example, springtime in the poem here, the ground of spring, the god of spring, is not aware of like any particular plan for it. It's that spring arises out of this, out of without whatever the ground is that is without intention. This
mhm.
this before intention. or whatever is before of purpose. It's so that, purposelessness is both the um, limit to purpose that purpose needs, but also it is the horizon of any other purpose that's going to come. And one of the Nietzsche quotes, as we get into Nietzsche, that I think it's from Thus Spoke Zarathustra, that he uses is not God, but many gods. So not one meaning, one intention, but many, uh, you know, uh, meanings. So a constant flow of different meanings, so that none crowds out or stops the others.
Yeah, he said the quote is he says, "Just this is divinity, that there are gods, but no God."
Is that a Nietzsche quote or is that Brooks of
That's
Florence? I
Nietzsche.
thought.
That's Zip. That's the
Yeah,
book
that's what I thought.
Zarathustra.
Yeah, okay, that's
Yeah,
what I thought.
just this is divinity, that there are gods, but no God. Um,
Yeah.
so that's kind of, I mean, very much like central to his idea in this book that in order to experience the gods and to get into like the deeper a deeper experience of life and you know,
Not to limit divinity, not to limit the
yeah,
holiness, the sacrality of the world. Like if you're yeah, like it's unlimited, so like let it be unlimited. But yeah.
yeah, and like I mean what I like about this poem, and I mean it's me reading, it's like I'm as really no, you know, no background or other than what he's telling us here. I mean the god of the springtime to me could be also chance, is like not just like
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
ground but
He
something
does say
like
that later on, yeah.
there is like a sense in which like you know we could say this about even like in a process idea of God. It's like that like there's chance is like such a central aspect of the our development and where like we've come from and where we are going, you know, as like human beings and like as the cosmos and the universe. um that it's like there's no way for God to know the outcome. You know,
Right.
it's like there's
Yeah.
yeah, it's like
Back
it's
to the
not
back
this
to the process, God. Yeah.
yeah, back to the process God. So that's what kind of comes to my mind. I mean, I'm like, but yeah,
Yeah, so this is a rejection of the omni-God, so the God who knows, the omniscient God. This is a rejection of the omnipotent God, the God who has all power, can do whatever, break whatever rule, the God who's omnipresent, even, so that God's withdrawal is going to be very important too, and that is a religious experience for many mystics, which is called the Dark Night. So. The granting of space, and that kind of thing. So, um, yeah, there's just well, maybe we should just get straight into Nietzsche here
yeah,
and
yeah.
his
I can read
grand.
this next. Yeah, so like the next quote actually is, I think, from Twilight of the Idols.
Mhm.
But Nietzsche says that, and so the point of this is actually like the title of this section, which is the weird idea. And so Brooke is saying like there's something that's common sense to us about the idea of God, like that is not easy to get rid of. So it's like he can't
Mhm.
just blame us. It's like we've been like this idea has been imposed on us and we just like take it and don't question it or whatever. He's like saying it's like, yeah, we do. There's reasons why there's like, you know, we think this way. It's kind of like our common sense leads us to this. And like one of the and Nietzsche speaks to this in this quote. He says, "We are not getting rid of God because we still believe in grammar." So
Mhm.
it's like a very, and we're going to get into like a couple different ways I think to read this, but I think a really, you know, he has like the a really, you know, his take on this is that, um, I think, you know, he gives the example of lightning strikes
Mhm.
or lightning flashes. Sorry. So he's saying
Either one works. Yeah.
right in our Western like Indo-European languages. there's like a we're actually like just doubling this word. We actually like you don't need to say both lightning flashes, but it by having these two words, it's necessary in our language because we want to have like an actor and an acted upon. Like there's a and so
or a subject and an object, or and what's important about the actor or the agent is like whether it's acting upon something or not, that there's somebody who intends the action. And so like this goes back to like this idea that like whatever action there is intentional. So it kind of like whatever you see happening, you attribute an intention to it, some purpose. So that we kind of like in the West at any rate, rule out the entire idea of purposeless action of things happening without an intention. Which kind of like brings me a little bit back to this point you were talking about with chance. It's so like because everything in a materialist determinist universe is already determined, you get like an Einsteinian block universe where it's already all done. It's just that you happen to be on one part of it, so you just can't see the rest of it or whatever. But like this is once you get rid of like this intentionality to everything and you introduce actual chance, now the universe is not finished. Now it's an unfolding that is like not a block universe. It is like anything can happen kind of a thing. And so you can see that's terrifying on the one hand, but it's also very exciting because, like you couldn't sit down and work it all out and then, if you knew the position of every particle or whatever the heck, and figure out like what's going to happen in the future, put it in some computer model. There's no possible computer model. It's the universe is no longer computational. Now it's like this,
yes,
truly, truly open deal.
yeah. And I mean, I think we'll probably get into this later, but that I mean, I think we're both very interested in quantum theory, and this Niels Bohr, idea that like or Einstein's criticism of Niels Bohr that God does not play dice, right? It was like,
Good, good. I'm glad you thought of that. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So it was like that very much that question is alive. And that, I mean, that to me is like, again, going back to this, like, why did I do philosophy, right? It's like I actually like studied physics first at Indiana because
Hmm.
I wanted to, I was like really like, this is the real question. Does God play dice or does not play dice? It's like, is there chance or is there not chance? Like, is the universe unfolding according to a plan or
Yeah.
my experience, which is like there's not a plan. It's
No
being made up
guarantees.
all the
Yeah,
time,
yeah, that's right.
right?
Yeah.
And
There
like
are, of
we're
course,
doing the best I can.
determinations. It's just that those
Yeah.
determinations aren't final. They will have a lot to do with the future we get. It's just that there's chance intervenes on whatever purposes, whatever intentions, whatever determinations arise. So
Yeah, and I want to say, yeah, I don't mean to that, and I think we'll get into this is like one of the things you learn. I mean, I learned as I grew up and studied was like how determined I was by, for instance, like my cultural milieu, my like the language. I think this is the Nietzsche's point. It's like by the fact that the way we even use language influences how we think about the world.
hmm.
So there's like, and I think this is what we're going to move into next to talk about Lacan. And so like why, like Lacan kind of also gives another explanation for why we kind of like have a baked in idea of like a god like power like in the world.
Or a
And
godlike intention. Yeah.
yeah, and that's with what Lacan calls the big other, which is a big concept that he develops it like over time. But the general idea of the big other is that it's like it's the symbolic universe or the universe of meanings that inform everything that we see, that we create, that when we're in conversation with one another, we're making statements that are true to one another and trying to
Yeah.
be in a dialogue. The way we're able to do that is because we share meanings, we share like concepts, we share, this grammar, we share like um not just the actual signifiers that we're using, like cat, dog, and those thinking those point to actual like things in the world, which they do, but they also point to all other things that they are not. Um,
Mhm.
and that's
Well, they
like,
operate by they are what they are by what they are not. So people might, know about, how binary oppositions work. So we can't know light without dark, we can't know good without bad. It gets a lot more complicated than that, but like so that we when we see light, we there wouldn't be anything if there wasn't difference. And that's why, a symbolic or is a system of differences that present something, make something appear as if it's immediate and present by way of absence. So, yeah, you get a really sort of complicated thing going on where you assume the world is the way it is, sometimes called just like a primary naivete, just like in a naive way. Uh, but like what you don't realize because it's unconscious is the structure of language that is, or the symbolic structure that is underlying your entire way of being in the world, your experience of the world, the co- and
and
what's
also
so
how we relate to one another. I mean, that was like a
yeah,
big
yeah.
part of like how we present ourselves to one another is like we identify ourselves with this language of like, where I come from, who my parents are, what the stories we tell about ourselves, the way we want to appear to other people, the way we are ultimately appealing to something beyond those things themselves to like appear because we want to appear this way to others. We want to understand other people. Um, we have a there's this system, this symbolic big other that is what like grants those, in a sense, grants those meanings, is the is the universe in which those meanings exist. And
Mhm.
so they have that big other has effects on our world that's like undeniable, and we can't live without a big other, right?
We can't even have a self without a big other, and this is going to be really significant because like the way in which you understand yourself, the voices that are talking to you right now in your head, those were all given to you by something that was outside of yourself, which is the symbolic that was given to you, by your caregivers. Now you internalize it, you swallow the signifier, and for Lacan, the reason why you do that is because you want to be able to articulate your desire. But like the idea here is that you are yourself by way of something that is outside of yourself, something that existed before you, something that will exist after you. So that like this kind of relates again, we'll try to relate it as much as possible to the Chinese religions part, at least as far as we understand it. This relates very much to no self because it's like the idea like if you take away these relational differences of a system of a symbolic system, there's nothing left. The idea here is just that this thing is without relation, doesn't need relation. It is what it is by itself. And what we learn through structuralism, especially like Ferdinand de Saussure in France, and then C.S. Peirce in the United States. We what we learn is that whatever our world is, it can't stand by itself. It needs it needs like
And these
it needs
others.
relation. It needs others. It needs relation, and it needs a big other. It needs the symbolic, and it needs the big other to guarantee the meanings of the symbolic, even though the big other doesn't exist. Even we need a self, even though the self doesn't exist. Same kind of a deal.
And yeah, I mean, and these are very like high high flown concepts, and I mean it is like can be kind of hard to come up with really good examples. I'm going to do my best to give one, which is I think like the concepts of man and woman is like we might think like kind of on an intuitive level that, oh, like a man Like I know what a man is, and maybe a man has like we think like certain like we could, it gets, can get very political very fast. But let's say like a man, we might think that a man refers to certain like way that somebody carries themselves in space. And it's like, is that like, their biological sex, or is that their gender, or is that um like what is it that actually like creates the concept man is like something that we are is constantly changing, right? So it's like, and it refers to all kinds of differences. So it's like different. Well, man is not a woman. I know that, right? It's like, so at least I can say that. But then we introduce the concept more, now of like of a non-binary person, and it's like, what does that, what does that mean, and what does that signify? Well, I mean, and we have to like listen to one another to find out what those things mean. But we also, with our experience of getting to know other people and listening to them, we can experience like what they're telling us, what their experience of being non-binary, which I can tell you, like from my experience of like a sense of like that man doesn't necessarily like capture everything, something essential about, my being, or like that there's something that it for me escapes that signifier and
Mm.
is not, and that it isn't essential to who I am as a person. Um, and so I think the point of that I'm trying to get at here is that every concept has like these unconscious, very mostly unconscious connections to other things that, to other concepts, to images, to even particular images that we have of like the stereotypical man or the stereotypical woman, or like, you know, any, it can be like very concrete and also very like conceptual, like, but the point of it is the big other contains all of it, right? And it's like, and it's constantly like not at one with itself. And that's like something we also can experience is like that this is something that's changing over time and has been changing like, even like in the last 5 years is like drastically changing around this whole like in this whole area. So it's like I think it's a good example of why of how the big other is not really at one with itself.
Yeah, we can say that the big other, you know, doesn't have a bigger other to govern it. So it doesn't have what's sometimes called a there's no meta language, is Lacan's famous phrase. Basically, like there's nothing that guarantees the meanings of, the big other, but we have to act as if there were a guarantee, even though there isn't one. But the big other does have an other, and it's this not at oneness. It's this gap like between itself and and us. Like we are the thing that we are what makes symbolization fail. There's something about us, and there's something about identity which we could think of even as the misrecognition of identity. So there's the identifying part, the part of us that can be understood and interpolated into the symbolic. But there's this part of us that resists symbolic interpolation, that resists the concepts of the big other, that resists the categories and classifications. There's been this huge push in science, to have these categories, sometimes called natural kinds. And the idea of a natural kind would be like, this thing is a real thing. Like a man is a man because like this is written in nature somehow. This is like this is reality, like and there's like this constant like push to try to like deny or disavow the not-at-oneness of the symbolic. There's this constant push to try to like say that no, the like we there is a symbolic, there is a meta language that can like give us like correct definitions and identities and like draw the correct lines in between males and females. You need the big other to function, but part of what it means, and this is the beauty of the big other not existing is like that's your space to do something new, to make new. The not at oneness of the
Yes.
symbolic is the gap that lets you play, that makes it that makes identities fail, so that you've got room to make a new identity. And those are the very small degrees of freedom, imaginary, virtual freedom that you have to imagine a new world, and to imagine new concepts or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
uh,
And yeah, there's no, I mean, we could probably like get in, go have a long conversation about it, but this project of locking down a concept of an all powerful God that's kind of in control does go well with also wanting to lock down these concepts and making for sure, and trying to convince us that really how you're free is you when you don't have to think about it anymore. Like you can just like you're told what it is, you do it, and then you're happy because that's God made you this way, and you're going to be the most happy if you just go along with how God made you and don't try to like question it or change it or like, you know, think very hard about it.
Yeah, so I don't know. We're getting close to time. What do you think? That was, or anything else to talk about in terms of, the ways in which, whether we claim it or not, we have a sense of a God that has an intention because we speak a language. So that in order to speak it, we have to imagine, even if it's unconscious, like we have to, we're acting as if, let's say, there is this intention. But thankfully, we get our freedom when this symbolic intention to fix meanings and fix identities fails.
Yeah, I think we're good.
All right, sounds.
I think we got it. So cool.
All right, good. All
All
right.
right. Thanks.
Thanks, bud. Talk to you later.
All right. Talk to you. All right. Bye.